Go. Hey, church, I'm Clark,
And I'm Chris.
and we're here to do the devotional again this week. We're moving ahead in our story of the Bible to Abraham's grandson named Jacob. And this is going to be
Weird.
what?
That sounds weird. I've never said that before.
Yeah,
Abraham's
he's
grandson.
his grandson of Abraham. And the story of Jacob, so we're going to read chapter 32 um, this week. Jacob is a jerk. That's all I really have to say. Like reading through his story this week, sometimes we think of Old Testament guys like Abraham, Jacob, Moses, like we think of them as these heroes that we're supposed to all be like. Jacob's not a good person. He steals his brother's blessing from his blind dad, takes advantage of the fact that his dad is blind, dresses up like a hairy man, and pretends to be his brother so he can get the blessing. He's a total, he's a jerk to his uncle who he wants to marry. Well, that's complicated, by the way, also that he wants to marry his cousin. But the fact that after 7 years of working, he basically says to his uncle, "Hey, I've worked for 7 years. It's time to let me get married so I can go into your daughter." It's basically just being like, "Hey, I need to get married so I can have sex with your daughter." Jacob's not. I don't like Jacob, right? He's not. So, what are we supposed to get from this story of Jacob, Chris Stewart? You come to this wrestling match, and we go to verses 9 through 13. What do you see going on, first of all, in Jacob's prayer before the wrestling match?
I don't know. You saying that this morning reminds me. Um, I like broken heroes,
Yeah.
and I like that he's broken because that gives me hope for myself because I'm broken and so comparing myself to him, I'm a jerk. Maybe I'm not as much of a jerk as he is. I hope I'm not as much of a jerk. Don't ask my wife that. Anyway, so the first thing that jumps off the page at me as I look at this passage is Jacob's prayer to God, and he is scared literally for his life, and praying to God, save me from my brother. I think he's going to kill me tomorrow. And the way that he prays is really interesting. God of my father Isaac, or excuse me, of my father Abraham and my father Isaac, O Lord. So God of my fathers, and then O Lord, in this Yahweh, the personal name of God, he's crying out to God, and then he says, "Who said to me?" And then he quotes God back to himself. And it's really interesting the way that he prays. I don't hear very many people pray like that today, and so I think that there is it's a model that we can follow. He rehearses what God has promised him, and then he acknowledges grace. I am not worthy is a great thing to really believe and from the heart say to God, "Hey God, I'm not worthy, but you are a gracious God. Please be gracious to me." And so, really interesting prayer, and I think it's that we can learn from Jacob, our broken hero, how to pray.
Yeah, and he's yes, he's awful and he does terrible. And he this episode turns his life around essentially. I mean, he has that he comes to this point of prayer, of humbleness, and then we have this really strange wrestling match going on in the middle of
Mm.
the night. It's kind of like last week, I feel like, with Abraham, where we're like, wait, who are these people? It's like, who's this guy wrestling with Jacob? And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's safe to say that we're supposed to see this person as God himself coming down and wrestling Jacob. But well, what I think stands out to me the biggest is I think we should focus on the name change that God gives to Jacob. So names in the Old Testament and in ancient times are really, really important. They were really important to the people. It told who you are, who you're
Mhm.
going to be, right? So his name was Jacob, which means he grabs by the heel, because there's this story of when he's born with his brother, they're twins, and he grabs him by the heel. But it basically means he supplants, and that's Jacob's whole life. He's grabbing people by the heel and taking what isn't supposed to be his, right? He's deceiving, he's a trickster. And now, after this wrestling match with God gives him a new name, calls him Israel, which means he who strives with God.
Mm.
Jacob grabs hold of God, grabs hold of that grace, and refuses to let go. He refuses to let go of God until he is blessed. I think that is also a model of prayer. Grabbing hold of God. This is, you say you're going to bless me. You're going, like, I'm not going to let go. And God gives him a new name. You are now someone who will strive with God. And that's meant in a good way, I think. Someone who's going to wrestle with God and have God be a part of his life. So Jacob's life totally changes, totally turns around. Chris, you talked about the prayer. How do you apply that prayer to our lives?
Yeah, I think the wrestling with the times I think in my life that prayer has been most dramatic have been times when I was like Jacob, a little bit desperate, or
Yeah,
a lot
a
bit
lot of
desperate.
desperate. Yeah.
And we do the fill in the blank prayer, and one of the reasons is because of prayers like this. When Jacob starts with, "Who is God?" Right? You're the God of my father Abraham. You're the God of Isaac. You are Yahweh. And so he fills in the blank. And so one of the things I try to do is, okay, who is God? How many times can I fill in that blank when I'm desperate? Or like Abraham when he's arguing with God for, was it Sodom?
Yeah.
He's arguing with God, and it's this funny, interesting, making a case, not arguing, fighting, but arguing your case before the judge and laying out, okay, judge, this is who you are, and then and this is what I need, what I really want, and I don't deserve to come to you, but I'm boldly coming before you. And so I think the application is wrestle with God in a bold, specific, but very, very humble way. God, this is what I really, really want or need. And I don't at all deserve to have you answer my prayer, but please do anyway. Be gracious to me. What about you, Clark? How do you apply the wrestling?
So I think, yeah, what you were talking about, the wrestling of God, that's I feel like I see that that's what our prayer life looks like. But I've been reading through the Psalms this month, and one of the questions that the Psalm writers write over and over again is, "How long, O Lord? You are good, you are just, how long is life going to go on like that?" And I think that's what God calls us to do, is to grab hold of his promises and ask him to fulfill them, come through, God. And then I think for us as Christians on the other side of the cross can look at this and see, okay, Jacob's old self, his old name, and he's been given a new name, and reminding ourselves of that daily also in prayer. Lord, you've given me a new name. You've given me a new life. You've called me a child of God. I'm no longer, what's the song? I'm no longer a slave to sin. I'm no longer a slave to fear, but I'm a child of God. And so reminding
I think
ourselves.
you could make an argument for fill in the blank prayer, adding an extra blank. Who is God? Who am I?
Yep.
God, you are blank. I am your son.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we got for this week. Chris and Angie will be out of town this week, but
See you guys next
we
week.
will see them on the next week. We will see the rest of you on Sunday at church to talk about Jacob wrestling God. See you next time.
Peace.